Hi. I have a couple of questions, and one has to do with what I think Bob was talking about, relationships. I'm in the process of separating from my wife of 18 years, and I've been looking at that. Part of what's going on, similar to what he was talking about in terms of a house, when I look at my relationship, how it was, there are a lot of things about it that I really appreciate and really love. And when I look at those, sometimes I find myself feeling negative or sad because those things are no longer there. And I'm wondering what I can do at that moment, because it feels like the thought that goes through my mind at that point is, well, if appreciating makes you sad, maybe you should be appreciating.
Appreciation doesn't make you sad. In other words, appreciating always feels good, but noticing something that you want isn't makes you sad.
Okay.
In other words, if you can realize that if it feels good, that means you're in vibrational harmony with the essence of it. If it feels bad, that means you're not in vibrational harmony with the essence of something that you want. That's why we're saying it feels confusing because it feels like the same subject. I'm thinking about aspects of the relationship, or I'm thinking about the house, and it's making me feel bad. And we say, that's why if you will learn to tune your sensor in terms of feeling rather than thinking, you can get into the vibration that will ultimately allow what you want more quickly. Let's talk about this in a little bit of detail, because we know these words are logical, but we want you to really get it. Give us an example of a thought that makes you feel bad, one that you come across regularly.
That my wife, Karen, and I used to walk a lot with our dog in the woods and on the beach and things like that.
The other day, a wonderful man in Southern California sat in a room like this, and he was talking about some things that were going wrong. And we played with him a little bit, as you've heard us doing here today, trying to get him to talk about what he wanted. And finally he blurted, "Well, sure, Abraham, if I could have it my way." And we said, hear that. If you could have it your way, in other words, you absolutely can have it your way once you find the feeling place of what your way is. And sometimes it takes a little bit of contrasting experience to even understand what you want. Now, we have to ask, in other words, if the relationship had positive aspects, what is the separation about?
I think that the separation is about the two of us realizing that there were other things that we needed to do or to explore for ourselves in our lives that were not happening for some reason in our relationship.
So it felt sort of like whatever the dynamics were of your relationship, it was keeping you bogged down and disallowing both of you from many of the things that you wanted.
Yes.
Now, can you hear us when we say, you can say, well, it was the dynamics of our relationship, or you could say it was our habit of observation, or you could say it was our lack of ability to visualize. In other words, there are a lot of other ways of explaining that, aren't there? Now, we're not in any way implying that you're making a bad decision in choosing something different. In other words, that's just fine. But if you will begin to think in terms of what you're moving to rather than what you seem to be moving from, you'll begin to feel better right away. Can you find anything like that easily? In other words, what are you going to? Or is most breakup or divorce about what I'm leaving, what I'm moving from? Is a divorce more about exclusion than anything? Not always, but for the most part, a divorce is more about what I don't want. And so there's a lot of pushing against what I don't want, which puts you in sort of rocky ground for a while, because what you do want then can't begin to flow to you. That's why our friend began earlier by saying, I am going through, or I have been going through, or I've just gone through. In other words, gone through an ordeal. You usually don't say, I've just gone through a delightful walk in the park. You usually don't say that. I've gone through this ordeal. Now, from where you're standing, having lived this exaggerated contrast, because there were some issues that along the way were causing some desires to be born within you. So along that rocky contrasting ground and within the mess of the divorce and even in the sadness that follows it, from where you stand now, what do you most want? In other words, what has the contrast netted for you? What decisions have you come to as a result of what you've been living?
Well, I think where I'm headed is to a place where I express myself both in my relationship with whoever that may be with and out in the world.
Now, has somebody been telling you that you don't express yourself? Is that your conclusion, or has somebody been accusing you of non-expression?
Yeah, somebody has.
Oh,
Guess
you thought
who?
so.
No.
It was that one, wasn't it? The reason that we ask that is because almost always when someone makes a clear statement of something they've decided, it usually is born out of some contrasting experience. But saying, in other words, as you say, I'm going to express myself more from that feeling place of having that been one of the reasons that the last relationship failed. Are you getting the sense of what we're talking about? The vibration that you're emitting isn't going to get you anywhere pleasing. So describe it a little further. In other words, what do you mean when you say, I want to be more expressive? Get inside it. In other words, as we were talking about painting the picture, describe to us, get inside of a relationship mentally and sort of describe to us what it feels like to be in this expressive relationship. Or is it even any place you want to be? Is it some place that somebody else wanted you to be?
No, yeah, I can do that. I've been doing that a lot, and what it looks like to me is that when I am feeling something,
yes,
whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, that I'm willing to say what that is, rather than processing it through my mind. So being willing to express what's happening for me right in that moment.
In other words, what you've decided to do is make what you're feeling a bigger part of your partner's experience.
Absolutely.
Sort of get the feeling out on the table faster so that everybody knows what they're dealing with rather than letting the attraction go so far without anybody knowing.
Yes.
Well, we think that's a good thing. We would qualify it a little bit by saying, and I plan to be really heavy on expressing the good things and lighter on expressing the bad things. In other words, we are not really big encouragers of talking about things that are bothering you, because what it usually does is just attract more of it. All right. Do you think you're ready for another relationship? In other words, is it something that when you think about that, does it make your heart flutter a little bit? Does it make a feeling of enthusiasm move in you at all? Or are you sort of numb on that issue?
No, it does make me feel good.
And so describe a relationship to us a little more.
Well, it would be a relationship on lots of different levels, physical, mental, emotional, in the sense that we could walk on a beach and be happy and say nothing, or we could be in a conversation in front of a fire somewhere talking about the deepest metaphysical principles all the way down to why that log was burning, how it was burning. Or we could be doing any number of different things, whether it's sitting in a concert somewhere, enjoying that, watching someone else be creative, or creating for ourselves, either writing, things like that.
Right. Do you believe him? You do, don't you? In other words, what you speak and what you are emanating with your feeling is very much of a vibrational match. In other words, you're in a very good mode of sending a signal about what you are wanting. Now, come back to your original question with us. Can you find it again?
About looking at the relationship as it was, seeing the good parts about that, and having that evoke
All right, this is a really important topic because what happens to so many people when they are in the process of moving on in their experience from someone to someone else or from something to something else is that there is this fear that we feel within many of you that if you look back with appreciation about what was, that you'll get yourself in that place of unfulfilled yearning. In other words, remember the 3 baskets that we talked about earlier, where if you want something that you don't have, that there's a feeling of contradiction that happens that is really unpleasant. So what happens to most people is, in order to at all costs avoid that feeling of wanting something that they don't have, then they play down their wanting. In other words, they don't allow themselves to really want it. They're afraid to revisit those subjects because they're afraid of that pain coming back again. But what we're encouraging you to do really is to sort of bite the bullet and still go for your ideas of what you are wanting, and at the same time do your best to find aspects of it. In other words, try to feel good while you're thinking those thoughts. And what can happen to you, you see, when something that you have lived has been painful to you, it has caused a desire to skyrocket at a very high vibration. And most of you don't realize how much power there is in that kind of desire, even if you're nowhere near vibrational harmony with it, with a little bit of relaxing or surrendering. Some would say just sort of releasing or trying to find relief. Your cork will float right away. In other words, that's one of the reasons that it's so easy for us, as we see you struggling in your physical lives, to know it's worth every particle of the struggle. Because we know that the desire that is being born out of the struggle can be easily fulfilled if you'll just relax and let it be. So there's something about finally giving up this sense that I have to justify anything and just saying, hey, I appreciate so many aspects of that relationship. Most of all, I appreciate the newfound desire that I now have. So we were talking with a woman recently who was not willing to find one particle of redeeming value in her recent marriage because she was afraid if she appreciated it, he'd come back. And we said, the only way he would come back is if you keep feeling the way you've been feeling. In other words, by finding a vibration that feels really good, that's very foreign from all that was, in other words, you don't need to worry about that coming back. And so just reach for that place that feels good, and in a very easy, comfortable way. You're very good with words. In other words, you're very good at painting emotional pictures by visualization and with words, and we would encourage you to just play with that. It is our feeling that good things are so near to you that it's almost as if you can open a door and there they'll be. In other words, there will not be a long period of time between where you are and the manifestation of what you are wanting.
If I can just follow, thank you.
Yes.
If I could just follow up on that for a moment. The other thing I wanted to ask about, and it seems related to me, is that lately I've been noticing that when I'm visualizing things in the way that I want them, there are some moments when I'm not visualizing, and I seem to have a default mechanism based upon years and years of habits of thought and all those kinds of things. It feels like that default mechanism is sabotaging me somehow. That I'm not even conscious of it, but
well, let us tell you what that's about. It's a habit of thought that's such a habitual, comfortable thought that you don't even know you're thinking it unless you have trained yourself to. You see, it's like when you deliberately hold a positive thought for 17 seconds, 34 seconds, 51 seconds, 68 seconds, you consciously attune yourself to that frequency. Then when you go into that default mode that you're talking about, it sticks out like a sore thumb. But if you haven't established a real clear benchmark, then you can drift off into that nebulous area and not be so aware of it.